Thank you for coming today. I apologize I couldn't be here for the whole thing, but we will do the best we can. Okay, the training today is on job hazard analysis. I challenged each of you to prepare job hazard analysis for each of your positions in your workplace. And I realize that that's an ongoing process. It's also something that after you do get them finished, that they need to be reviewed on a regular basis. So every year you might want to have someone go over them. All right, so who needs this training? Granted, today it's just the safety committee members, but who actually eventually needs this training is supervisors, the safety committee members, and employees who will be involved in developing their job hazard analysis. The training explains what a job hazard analysis is and offers guidelines to help you conduct your own step-by-step analysis. What is a hazard? It's a good place to start. So a hazard is the potential for harm. In practical terms, a hazard often is associated with a condition or activity that, if left uncontrolled, can result in an injury or illness. I have printed out copies of Appendix 2 for you, which contains a list of common hazards and descriptions. Identifying hazards and eliminating or controlling them as early as possible will help prevent injuries and illnesses. Now, a job hazard analysis. A job hazard analysis is a technique that focuses on job tasks as a way to identify hazards before they occur. It focuses on the relationship between the worker, the task, the tools, and the work environment. Ideally, after you identify uncontrolled hazards, you'll take steps to eliminate or reduce them to an acceptable risk level. Now, the reason these are so important, many workers are injured and killed at the workplace every day in the United States. And as you all know, PID, we have historically had a fairly high injury incident rate. So this is just one more tool or one method that we can utilize to help reduce that injury rate. It also happens to be an OSHA regulation that we do this. Safety and health can add value to your business, your job, and your life. You can help prevent workplace injuries and illnesses by looking at your workplace operations, establishing proper job procedures, and ensuring that all employees are trained properly. One of the best ways to determine and establish proper work procedures is to conduct a job hazard analysis. A job hazard analysis, or JHA, is one component of the larger commitment of a safety and health management system. Supervisors can use the findings of a job hazard analysis to eliminate and prevent hazards in the workplaces. This is likely to result in fewer worker injuries and illnesses, safer, more effective work methods, reduced workers' compensation costs, and increased worker productivity. The analysis also can be a valuable tool for training new employees in the steps required to perform their jobs safely. It's a good indicator of what the hazards are and an excellent training tool. For a job hazard analysis to be effective, management must demonstrate its commitment to safety and health and follow through to correct any uncontrolled hazards identified. Otherwise, management will lose credibility and employees may hesitate to go to management when dangerous conditions actually threaten them. It will help you in developing your Accident Prevention Program, APP, a labor and industry safety requirement for all employers. All right, accepting a risk or hazard is not the same as eliminating or controlling it. When conducting a JHA, you may want to take a fresh look at the way things are done at your workplace. I know a lot of times people say, well, we've done it this way for 10 years or 20 years and nothing's ever happened. Nobody ever got hurt, but that doesn't mean that a risk is not there. So that's why I encourage us all to review our workplaces regularly to take a comprehensive look and see if any hazards do exist. And make sure to look with an open mind. That's important. So, how do we determine which jobs are appropriate for a job hazard analysis? A JHA can be conducted on many jobs in your workplace, but priority should go to the following types of jobs. Jobs with the highest injury or illness rates, jobs with the potential to cause severe or disabling injuries or illness, even if there's no history of previous accidents. Break job down into key components. Once a job is identified, you need to then break it down further into subtasks. You list all the hazards associated with each one of those subtasks. Be careful of putting too much detail, because then it makes a JHA really long and not very practical to use. But don't have it too brief, because then you may be omitting hazards. Make sure you get all the hazards in there and all the tasks that are associated with those hazards. The correct amount of detail breaks the job into components that make sense in terms of the overall job. Generally, they say between 10 and 14 subtasks per job. All right. This next slide, titled Breaking Job into Key Components, Changing a Light Bulb. Now, it gives 3 examples. One has entirely too much detail. All right. Well, too little detail, they say, get a ladder and a new light bulb. Change the bulb. Okay, then the right amount of detail suggests get a ladder and a new light bulb, and then that's it. You don't have to say that you're carrying it to the new place, because that's kind of obvious. The next slide, evaluate subtasks using a JHA checklist. There are a variety of JHA forms and checklists. Here's a link to one. It's OSHA.gov publications, OSHA 3071. It's a PDF form. Certain hazards are common on many jobs. Here's a link to partial list of questions about hazards. What these next 3 or 4 different links do is try and give you examples, specific examples related to the office, related to preschool teachers, related to delivery drivers. If you have a different aspect of your job or a different type of job that's not listed here, feel free to go to the internet and do a search and look for sample JHA or sample job hazard analysis, or they're also called job safety analysis, for whatever the job is that you want. And a lot of times you can just copy and paste or just slightly tweak the information that you get. All right, so how do we identify hazards in the workplace? A job hazard analysis is an exercise in detective work. Your goal is to discover the following. What can go wrong? What are the consequences? How could it arise? What are other contributing factors? How likely is it that the hazard will occur? To make your JHA useful, document your answers to these questions in a consistent manner. Describing a hazard in this way helps to ensure that your efforts to eliminate the hazard and implement hazard controls help target the most important contributors to the hazard. Good hazard scenarios describe where the event is happening, the environment, who or what it is happening to. This describes employee exposure. What precipitates the hazard, or what is the trigger? The outcome that would occur should it happen. What's the consequence? And any other contributing factors. A sample form is found in Appendix 3 in your handout. And it'll help you organize, I think it's the last page, it'll help you organize your information to provide the details that you need. Rarely is a hazard a simple case of one singular cause resulting in one singular effect. More commonly, several contributing factors tend to line up in a certain way to create the hazard. And as I often discuss, sometimes it takes the element or the factor of luck to be involved. It's bad luck, obviously, but it's just the way the cookie crumbles. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes, I mean, you might do something one way 100 times, and then not until the next day does it bite you. You might be distracted, you might be frustrated, you might be fatigued, you might be rushing. This next slide, you'll see I've tried to include some photos of different things that I've observed on my safety observation, safety visits. We have improper labeling of containers. That's a GHS violation. A blocked exit. These are, OSHA loves to cite businesses for stuff like this. That's why I take pictures of them and to share them with you guys so that we can get the word out that these things are not acceptable in our workplaces. Those are the two worst ones probably for citation. But uneven surfaces. Now you'll see in this photograph here that they actually have two bright yellow lines painted on the floor. So that's good because there's kind of a little step down right there. The next one with a blue-faced employee, we have an enthusiastic but untrained employee. What is she doing incorrectly with that cart? Okay, the next one, pinch points, then lifting technique. You can see that's not a very good lifting technique. Puncture hazards from the broken bin lid, and then hidden electrical fire hazards. These are things that should be ferreted out, found out when our supervisors or our safety committee people or delegates perform their monthly safety inspection of our sites. Now, some of the locations, obviously, we don't own the building, so we can't just go in and fix it. But we can go in and we can report it to the owner of the building, the manager of the building, and work with them. Sometimes if funding's an issue, sometimes we can pay for those repairs if they're small. All right, here's a sample job hazard analysis form. We'll get some forms made up and get them uploaded to the, Facebook at work. All right, the next one, the next slide, small business job hazard analysis, general example. All right, how people get hurt, what causes them to get hurt, and what safe practices or PPE are needed. So it's kind of the same thing. How people get hurt, what causes injury, and yeah. But this just has some tasks, jobs and tasks filled out. So ladders tipping over, that's how they're getting hurt. They should say what the task is, because ladders tipping over is not a task description, is it? Lifting heavy objects, that's a task description. Slipping on the floor, that's not a task description, but walking is. Using a bench grinder, that's a task description. So don't, in the how people get hurt, in the task description section, do not write down the hazard, because that goes in the next section, the next column. All right. Okay, the next slide is kind of pretty. Risk management services, common hazards in the workplace. The stressor, hazard type, hazard type, hazard type. All right, the stressors are that they have listed: chemical, electrical, mechanical, ergonomic. And then the type of hazard associated with each of those: chemical would be corrosive, fire explosion, toxic. Electrical could be shock, short circuit, fire, static. Mechanical stressor could involve moving parts. Mechanical failure, noise, pressure. Ergonomic can be strain, human error, fatigue. Next page, radiation, contact, environment, miscellaneous, and then the associated hazard types that go with them. Miscellaneous is slips, trips, and falls. Very important. All right, how do we rank hazardous tasks so that we'll know which ones to actually focus on first? If you're going to go in and focus on everything, then it doesn't matter. But like I say, these JHAs are time consuming, and to be done right, they need to be comprehensive. They need to involve any and all hazards. All right, so once you identify jobs or tasks, you need to rank these tasks. Now, one method for ranking considers the probability that the hazard will cause an injury and an estimate of the severity of that injury. These are not precise predictions of when or how severe an injury may be, they're only estimates. The method can help you decide which is more important: an infrequent job that has the potential to kill a worker, or frequent job that causes less severe injuries. Severity table, probability table. Consider the severity of the injury if something may go wrong while doing the task in the severity table. Okay, so if whatever task we're doing could have, if it could cause death, then it would be catastrophic. That would get a score of a 4. If it's very unlikely that it could ever, but it's possible, then if we see down below in the probability table, that would be a remote classification. That would give us a score of a 2. Then we take 2 times 4, and that particular hazard or task gets an 8 for a score. And then we move to the next one. We rate all of our tasks according to their hazard priority. All right. After you've identified the jobs and after you've categorized them, now you want to determine different ways that you can eliminate or control these hazards. Now, the best method, if possible, is to eliminate the hazard altogether. If elimination is not an option, then control the hazard at its source with engineering controls, or limit worker exposure by administrative controls. Okay, let me give you for instance. We, in our vans, depending upon how much cargo we want to put in there, the seats don't go high enough. So we stack the cargo up higher than the seats. If the driver were, for some reason, required or needed to slam on the brakes of the vehicle, if there's nothing in front of that load, that cargo, it's going to come flying forward. If they run into something at a decent speed, then where's all that stuff going to go? It's going to hit the passengers. So that's what we want to try and avoid. Definitely want to stack for maneuverability of the vehicle as well. You want to stack the heaviest items on the bottom and then the lightest things toward the top. I've also seen we have dividers for like the changing table area, or we have little PVC pipe dividers for doorways and things like that. I've seen people stack those up so that those can act as a cargo barrier. Now, in a high-speed impact, those probably wouldn't do much. For slow, slam on your brake kind of stuff in town, 20 miles an hour, that kind of deal, they probably stop stuff if it's light. I'm pushing for cargo nets or cargo screens. I've seen one of our vans has a cargo screen. I think it's in Tutu and Me. I'm not sure, I can't remember, but anyway. Okay, so those are just examples. If those two methods are not enough to remove or reduce the worker exposure, now that's engineering controls and limit worker exposure by administrative controls, After this slide, we're going to talk about those controls because I said we'd get to that and I didn't yet. If those two methods are not enough to remove or reduce the worker exposure to acceptable levels, then personal protective equipment must be used. So in this instance, for this kind of a hazard, we'd have everyone in there wearing hard hats. All right. Personal protective, and that was kind of a joke, by the way, but that would give you an idea of using PPE as a third step. All right, personal protective equipment can also be used temporarily while engineering controls are installed. All right, let's talk about different methods of hazard control. Okay, so please pull out your handouts that you should have. Appendix 1, Hazard Control Measures. Information obtained from a JHA is useless unless hazard control measures recommended in the analysis are incorporated into the tasks. Managers should recognize that not all hazard controls are equal. Some are more effective than others at reducing risk. The order of precedence and effectiveness of hazard control is the following. Number 1, engineering controls. Number 2, administrative controls. And as a last method of recourse, personal protective equipment. Engineering controls include the following. Eliminate or minimize the hazard. Designing the facility, the equipment, or process to remove the hazard, or substituting processes, equipment, materials, or other factors to lessen the hazard. Enclosure of the hazard using enclosed cabs, enclosures for noisy equipment or other means. Isolation of the hazard with interlocks, machine guards, blast shields, welding curtains, or other means. And removal or redirection of the hazard, such as with local and exhaust ventilation. An example in our environment where something like this, where we could engineer the hazard by elimination or minimization, would be to, instead of using Clorox bleach, which some people find, well, it is an irritant and it's caustic and it's hazardous to our health. Some people find it irritating to the nasal passages, and definitely burns their eyes if they're in high concentrations, and it can eat holes in your skin. So we could look for, I know there are other substances that can do the same job and are less hazardous. So that would be an example of an engineering control. Next page. Administrative controls include the following. Written operating procedures, work permits, safe work practices. Exposure time limitations. Used most commonly to control temperature extremes and ergonomic hazards. Monitoring the use of highly hazardous materials. Alarms, signs, and warnings. Buddy system and training. An example here would be, I can think of loading and unloading the vans for Tutu and me and Kappa Alana. When you're loading and unloading, usually they do that. They take turns. It's not something that one employee has to do 5 days or 4 days a week, all the time. So if you're doing that, then you're lifting more. Then your chances of getting injured are also greater. All right, personal protective equipment, such as respirators, hearing protection, protective clothing, safety glasses, hard hats, latex gloves or vinyl gloves or rubber gloves, leather gloves. It's acceptable as a control method. Also, protective shoes. It's acceptable as a control method in the following circumstances. When engineering controls are not feasible or do not totally eliminate the hazard. While engineering controls are being developed, when safe work practices do not provide sufficient additional protection, and during emergencies when engineering controls may not be feasible. Use of one hazard control method over another, higher in the control precedence, may be appropriate for providing interim protection until the hazard is abated permanently. In reality, if the hazard cannot be eliminated entirely, the adopted control measures will likely be a combination of all three items instituted simultaneously. Take a minute and digest that. Okay, so reviewing a job hazard analysis. Periodically reviewing your job hazard analysis ensures that it remains current and continues to help reduce workplace accidents and injuries. Even if the job itself has not changed, it is possible that during the review process you'll identify hazards that were not identified in the initial analysis. It is especially important to review your job hazard analysis if an illness or injury occurs on a specific job. Based on the circumstances, you may determine that you need to change the job procedures or provide additional controls to prevent similar incidents in the future. This is also true in a close call or a near-miss situation where an injury was barely avoided. Anytime you revise a job hazard analysis, it is important to train all employees affected by the changes in the job methods, procedures, or protective measures adopted. Again, I want to thank you for being here today, and I wish you a happy Thanksgiving. Mahalo. If you have any questions about this information, I'm sure either Brandy or Steve will be able to handle them for you. And now Steve is going to give a similar but different presentation on job safety analysis. Thank you.